This is what I know, that we are all connected, the universe reflected in each shining part. And everywhere I go, I recognize the faces, all of my relations in this one heart.
Welcome to A Wild New Year. This morning I have with me our practitioner, Carol Swift.
Question is this one. I really believe that all people are really pretty darn good. They're good people everywhere. So what do you say to people, good people and every people, anyone, what do you say when they ask you, why do bad things happen to good people?
I agree with you in your statement that the majority of people are good. And when we believe in that context that all people are basically good, those are the type of people we come in contact with. And it really unfolds in beautiful ways in our lives, because whatever we think is what we believe, and that's what is demonstrated. In this question, it sounds like there is a concern around people who are really, really good and trying so hard to make things work and struggling, and then something happens to them and we call it bad. And in that arena, I have to say that sometimes it is our belief and our judgment around what is a good thing or a bad thing that causes us to move into this place and possibly stumble or question. Because the truth is, stuff happens. Life happens to all of us. And where we have the responsibility and the ability is to decide if it's a good thing or a bad thing. And is it creating a struggle in our lives? It can be. But if we can move into that place of knowing that whatever's taking place, whatever's happening in my world, God is in all of this, then I think we can put a little bit of a different spin on that, and it can help us to move through it with grace and ease and not get bogged down with the idea that things are happening to me. So in answer to your question, I think good things and not so good things happen to all of us. And the end result is how we react and respond to them. I hope that's helpful. Thank you, Carol. Please join me in prayer. As we just breathe into this beautiful day, this incredible time, whatever time of day it is, for any of us who are listening, we just know in this moment right here, all is well. What a perfect sense that is to know that God, that power, universal wisdom, divine intelligence, is alive, awake, aware in this moment, in all moments with us, connected to us as we are connected in this spirit. God is, we are. How beautiful that is, how reassuring that is. And so right here and right now, I affirm that all people everywhere are blessed and are filled with this love, this knowing, this truth of their being, the love of the divine, to know that they have comfort in this place, in this space. It's perfect. It's good. And as we turn our attention to this time, we let go of everything else that could get in the way. We let go of any thoughts about tomorrow. We let go of any of those activities that are going to show up for us later, and we just take the time to breathe into this space and be here now, allowing the words that are spoken to be the perfect words, the perfect message, and to feed the Spirit in each and every one of us. I know it's blessed. I know it's absolutely blessed, because we are one with the divine and it cannot be any other way. And so I simply let this go in gratitude that great, great gratitude for the divine in all things. I let it go, I let it be. And so it is. Many years ago, my father had underwent heart surgery. He had a quadruple bypass. And when he got home and was recovering, he began to take walks every day. And my mom and I got so excited because he was actually taking some time to really kind of look at his health and look at his well-being. And we were so thrilled that he was following the doctor's guidelines. Now, my dad isn't a fast walker. He used to just take one little step and another little step. In fact, he just kind of moseyed along, we called it. And his walks began to be longer and longer, and he was gone for longer periods of time. And of course, my mother, being my mother, began to worry that something was happening to him, something was going wrong. And I said, well, you know what, Mom, how about if I take a walk with him and just see what's going on? And so I went out with him one day and we just kind of walked along. And what I noticed, first of all, I noticed that I was walking way too fast and I had to kind of slow down and back up to walk at his pace. But then what I noticed was he was always looking down at the ground. And he would look, from the left to the right, and he would kind of look over into the grass and the bushes. Now, when he got to an intersection, he'd look up to see if any cars were coming before he crossed. But for the most part, he was looking down. And I asked him one day, I said, so Dad, what are you looking for? And I should have known. My father was a treasure seeker. My whole life, I remember that he was always looking for that bonus, that money, that treasure that was going to be out there. We used to go for drives on Sundays where my brother and I would shout out to my dad that we saw a pop bottle by the road, and he would stop the car and we'd jump out and get the pop bottle and put it in the trunk. We collected aluminum cans. It was a family event in our family. And now, as my dad was taking these walks, he was looking for money. He was looking for money, and he often found some. He often came home with a little bit more cash than he left with, which was interesting. One day he even came in the house and showed me this beautiful shiny penny that he had dug out of the tar in the intersection of a fairly busy street about a half mile from their house. And I was seriously concerned because I can see this little old man on his hands and knees in the middle of the street digging up this penny and cars zipping by. But all he cared about was that he came home with it 1 cent richer than he'd left. So I want to do this with you right now. I want to just take a moment. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I want you to just kind of pause your activity. If you're laying down, I invite you to sit up. If you're standing, just continue to stand. And I want you to just look down at the ground around you. Just focus downward. Don't lift your eyes up. And I want you to pay attention to how much you can actually see as you're looking down. For most of us, it's probably a couple of feet, a circumference around our body that we can actually see clearly. There's that peripheral vision, but for the most part, it's kind of limited what we can see looking down. Now close your eyes for a second, take a breath, and look up. And if you're outside, that's even better. And if you're not outside sometime today, go outside and look up. But when you look up, even if you're in your house, you can see the ceiling, but you can also see the ceiling into the next room. You can see so much more is showing up in your visual awareness when you look up than when you look down. Maud Sun said it this way: look up, look down. Up is endless. Down has an ending. Always look up. What a beautiful message that is. When you take time today to go outside and look at the sky, I want you to realize that there's no ending to it. You cannot look over here and see where it begins and look over here and see where it ends. It expands exponentially around us. The universe is vast. The vision for us when we look up is huge. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Our talk title today is Looking Above. Now keep in mind, we're not looking up to see God, Because as I mentioned in the story last week, God isn't up there. God is everywhere. So as we look above, we're looking above to see the expanse and the beauty and the limitlessness of our lives and of our experience. We get to build on the realization that God is everywhere, God is all there is, and to just look up and see that beautiful, amazing sky. How incredible that is. The spiritual practice that I want to talk about today that aligns us with this is spiritual mind treatment. And I've talked about treatment in the weeks past just a little bit, but today I just want to talk about the first 2 steps of treatment. The first step of treatment is the step called recognition. As we move into that time of prayer, the first thing we must do is we must recognize this power, this truth, this essence, this energy that we call God, and all that it is. And when you pray, you can talk about that, you can speak to that as much as you need to truly allow yourself to recognize the magnificence and the majesty that is God. And then we move from that step of recognition, we move into the next step, which is called unification. So we talk about what God is, and then we talk about what we are, and we unify ourselves with God. We are connected. We can't be separated. I've talked about this many times. We can choose to think that there's a separation, but the truth is you cannot be separated from the Creator, the divine that lives within you. Whatever you do, wherever you go, whatever you say, however you behave, whatever you're eating that you pulled out of the freezer that maybe you shouldn't be eating right now, God is still present. We are connected all the time. And we know that God is always expressing through us because it is through us that Spirit has the experience of form. So we want to recognize that God is all there is, that God lives within us, that we are part of this power that Ernest Holmes teaches us about, and that this power is something that we can use, we can tap into it. It's good. It's perfect. Ernest Holmes actually says this: true liberty comes only through true harmony. True harmony only through true unity. And unity can come only through the conscious realization that we are one with God. This month we've been talking about this oneness all along. We've been talking about all these other components and factors, places, ways that we can practice and reconnect and stay aligned. And so we want to recognize this because we get to live in harmony. We get to live in that place of peaceful balance. We don't teach illusion in this philosophy. I have had people refer to my faith and my philosophy as airy-fairy. And that's just not the truth. If someone is ill, I recognize and acknowledge that their physical being is ill, is not healthy in that moment. I don't pretend it doesn't exist. We don't turn our minds away and say, well, that's not real. No. We stay in that place of awareness, but we know there's something more. We know there's something more than the condition. We know there's something in back of all things, and that is this power, this God. So this week, let's remember to look above, to be seekers, to look at the expansiveness, to look at that place where there is no limitation. I found a story of a woman who got a job in Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone National Park spans more than 6 million acres, and it has over 5 distinct ecosystems in it. Huge, huge park. And she was so excited because she'd always been active and she'd always been a lover of nature, and so she was thrilled to get this job. And so one day, her father came to visit her. And she decided to show him around. So they got in the car and they went to the famous Lamar Valley, where there are a lot of rolling hills. And they drove for quite a long time. And they finally came up to this point that's called one of the lookout points. And they stopped the car and they decided they wanted to get out and hike. First of all, they'd been in the car way too long and they wanted to see what was ahead. And so they began walking, and they began walking down this path and just kind of hiking along, and they came to this kind of like a ridge. And her father saw beyond the ridge where they were standing another ridge, and he said, look ahead. It's just over that ridge. Let's go. And he took off. And so she went along with him, and she's smiling and enjoying the time and enjoying their time together. And they came to the next ridge, and he saw another ridge. And he said, look, it's just over that ridge. Let's go. And he took off. And this happened 4 or 5 times. And finally, the last time she caught up with him, and she said, you keep saying that. You keep saying it's just over the next ridge. What's going on? And he said, I know it is. He said, I know there's something amazing for us to see today, and it's just over that ridge. And so they kept going. And they came to this ridge, and they saw a herd of pronghorn. And they stepped back, and they took a deep breath, and they saw adults, and they saw babies frolicking, masses of them. Now, for those of you who don't know, a pronghorn is similar to a deer. It is part of the antelope family, and it has these horns that come up that have these little prongs on them. And their coloring is pretty much the same as deer, but they're not seen very often anymore, even though the species has been around for over 1 million years in North America. And so they stood there on that ridge, and they watched these beautiful creatures that they would not have seen if they had stopped so long ago. Our lives are filled with limitless opportunity. Our question that we ask ourselves is whether or not we are willing to keep going, to keep seeking, to keep looking, to go over that next ridge to see what's there. Because when we look beyond, when we look above, we always see more. This month, we have taken time to tune in to some of the basics of the Science of Mind principles. We began by looking at timeless wisdom and evolutionary vision. And then we moved into that awareness and consciousness where we get to live so that we are paying attention to what's going on in our lives, and we know who we are, where we are, and how we can be. Being grounded. Then we moved into that idea of living in the present moment, being here now, and not projecting into that worrisome place where many people live, just to be here now. And then we looked at the idea of looking above, bringing prayer, spiritual mind treatment into our lives. All of these things we are taught are practices. Ernest Holmes teaches us that it's all about practice. I encourage you this week to continue to practice to get to that place of mastering your reality, of mastering your life, of getting to that place of knowing that you are grounded in faith so that nothing derails you, nothing gets in the way. The conditions do not stop us or halt us. I found this quote from Kobe Bryant that I want to share. He said, "It's not about the number of hours that you practice. It's about the number of hours your mind is present when you practice." Bless Kobe Bryant. He was talking about living in the present moment. Whatever you do, be here now with whatever you're doing. Keep practicing. Keep practicing. And know this, the view is waiting. Please pray with me. And so as we just breathe into this moment, this space, allowing all of this to percolate, to touch our minds, to touch our hearts, we know that God is present. We know that that oneness, that one being of all life is here now. And we know that we are connected, we are attached, we live within it, and it lives within each and every one of us. And it's beautiful, and it's reassuring, and it's calming, and it's wonderful. And so what I know for each and every one of us this day and this week is that we live in the presence of the divine, and that we understand that we can look beyond, that we can seek, that we can find more, that we can experience more, because Spirit has gifted all of it to us. How beautiful that is. How wonderful it is to know. So today I just bless all people everywhere, knowing that whatever conditions are taking place, that we can move through them, we can honor one another, we can support one another, and we can move into those places of healing and wholeness as a complete, unified planet of Earth. So we live in this perfection, we live in this knowing, we live in this light, we live in this truth. And each day we are reminded to look above and to continue to seek whatever it is we desire. We are blessed. Life is perfect. Life is good. God is so good. And I simply let this go, letting it be, as I affirm, and so it is.
This is what I know, that we are all connected, the universe reflected in each shining